Alright, so this is a pretty impromptu video that, to be honest, I didn't really even know I was going to be making until about some point last night, because very recently, Bleach Brave Souls, the mobile game, just revealed their special promotional character to tie into the game's 6th anniversary. And it turns out to be a brand new version of Bleach's main villain, Sosuke Aizen, and my favourite character in the series. And to be honest, he looks really awesome, so I just had to talk about it. Now, of course, to get it out of the way, this version of Aizen is non-canon. It's just a fun what-if scenario. But what that scenario exactly is, at least the time of recording, we're not entirely sure, and so in this video I want to give my thoughts and opinions as to what I think this version of Aizen is actually supposed to represent for the character. But before we begin the video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now, as we're about 500 subs away from the 70,000 subscriber milestone, which is just a crazy number that, you know, I've said a million times I never expected to reach. So thank you, of course, for that support. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, because it does help increase the exposure on YouTube and just mean that more Bleach fans get a chance to see it. And of course, if you want to take that support for me another step further, we do have a Patreon for the channel as well now, where you can support me for as little as $1 a month and get yourself early access to videos. And as always, a massive shout out and a huge thank you to everyone who has become a patron so far. So yeah, the Bleach mobile game Brave Souls is heading into its 6th anniversary coming up this week, and anyone who's played the game in the past knows that the anniversaries are traditionally a time to get really excited about the potential content that might be coming to the game, as the Brave Souls team try generally to create something original, something brand new, a riff on a beloved character that transforms them in a way we've never seen before. Some of the most successful attempts at these in the past, in my opinion at least anyway, were, for example, the Hogyoku Ascended Espada, almost all of which looked pretty incredible, and in the past we've had differing versions of Ichigo and Byakuya recently and stuff like that. But for the longest time, fans have been clamouring for the big bad himself, Aizen, to get this treatment, and obviously, you know, I'm included in that. He is my favourite character in the series, so many of us were overjoyed to see that he has been given a brand new form, a brand new look to commemorate this anniversary. Now, of course, as I mentioned originally, these kind of original content designs, they're not canon, they're fun what-if scenarios for things we could have seen in Bleach, or something that, you know, maybe could have happened in a different scenario or something like that. But I find them fun to kind of discuss and ponder regardless, and it's also really cool to see essentially official artwork of them anyway, and most of the time they look really good. And this version of Aizen, already given tons of different names by the community, including Galaxy Aizen and Space Zen, both of which I do quite like, is no exception to that rule, and he looks really cool. But what actually is this form supposed to represent? What is the what-if scenario we're seeing here? I've seen a lot of people coming up with a lot of different ideas, and I'd like to throw my 2 cents into the ring. So there's clearly a bunch of different Aizen-themed motifs at work here, kind of, I would say at least 3 all coming together to form this new version of Aizen. So obviously the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is this supposed to be a kind of what-if version of Aizen's Bankai had we actually seen it? And in my opinion, that's the easiest one to debunk. Unfortunately, it's definitely, almost certainly not Aizen's Bankai. From the way it looks, the way it so clearly takes inspiration from the Butterflies and version of the character it's supposed to be, another step of some kind of his Hogyoku evolution, perhaps closer to an all-powerful, even more godlike version of the character. Obviously, the theme of God and the idea of divinity is a major theme in Aizen's character, and there are huge religious overtones in the gameplay reveal trailer alone, with that kind of Gregorian chanting chorus in the background as we see Aizen for the first time, very much underscoring this idea that he has come even closer to that to a godlike being than ever before. However, even if this isn't Aizen's long-awaited Bankai, it still takes direct inspiration from his Zanpakuto, Kyoka Suigetsu. Now, I believe in Japanese the translation of his Zanpakuto is Mirror Flower Water Moon, and Mirror Flower certainly is on show here big time. In this form, Aizen's essentially butterfly wings have now separated from his body and taken the form of mirrored panes of glass, which is, in my opinion, a really cool design choice, at least on the forward-facing side of the wings. Anyway, the back is something we'll get to in a minute. And not only that, but actually in his gameplay, you can see him during his special move actually form a mirror flower in his hand before crushing it. And the entire thing is themed around this idea of reflections and showing you different images on these panes of glass. Obviously, Aizen's Shikai has always been characterized by creating this glass-shattering effect whenever he reveals the truth behind his illusion, so this is being played up big time here to show the connection to his Zanpakuto. Then, as I mentioned, there's the obvious connection to his Hogyoku transformations. He does, generally speaking, look most like butterflies in here, going from the dark eyes, the third eye in his forehead, the cracks in his face. In butterflies in form, he had similar sort of purple veins running along his chest, now they're on his face instead, and obviously the wings and just the general kind of elegance and that regal feeling he was sort of trying to go for at that point in time. But of course this diverges even further with the Hogyoku in his chest. What was once essentially a hollow hole has now kind of split open his chest in its entirety, creating this kind of weird cosmic cavity in his body. Now, when I saw that, my immediate first impression, the first thing that came to my head was that reminds me so much of when he's in his cocoon form midway through evolution and Isshin breaks a part of it open with Getsuga Tensho, and you can see briefly inside what he looks like, and he's just this twisting mass of energy and Reiatsu kind of forming what would be the new Aizen. And to me, that's kind of what this chest cavity really looks like, whether it's anything similar at all, or if it's now literally just a home to house the Hogyoku and its strange new crystals, which is something we'll talk about, is unknown. And then there's the final major motif, in my opinion, which is that of the Soul King. And in my opinion, this is actually probably the one that's the kind of biggest stretch of them all. So the Soul King has an obvious eye motif. We all know that. Mimihagi has a giant eye in its hand, Pernida has a giant eye in its hand, the Soul King has really weird eyes, the likes of which we've never seen before. Aizen, however, has also always had some kind of an eye motif, whether that's the fact that you have to see Kyoka Suigetsu to actually fall under its spell, or even down to the fact that when he started transforming, he gained weird coloured eyes. Certainly in the anime and official colourings, they are like purple and white, which is something we'd never seen before. The third eye in the centre of his head, and then his kind of final, most monstrous transformation also had huge eyes featured on the wings themselves. So for Aizen to have an eye motif is nothing new. However, I do think that in the wake of everything we know about the Soul King, this gives it new meaning. Another thing that seems to directly reference the Soul King is the fact that this version of Aizen has totally detached arms from his body, which kind of makes him look a little bit weird, kind of gives me like clay doll vibes from Pokemon. Kind of imagine them like moving on their own, Star Fox Andross style kind of boss fight. But obviously the Soul King's arms were ripped from his body and now act on their own as their own sentient beings. So there is that kind of resemblance there, which could also indicate the Soul King. So then what is this form supposed to be? Someone else I've seen this is also supposed to be Aizen once he's become the Soul King, his eventual goal essentially. We all know that Aizen was trying to break into the royal realm, defeat the royal guard, and assassinate the Soul King so that he could sit upon the throne of heaven as a completely transcended being who eclipses both Shinigami and Hollow. And again, I'm not convinced that's what this form is particularly. It's very difficult to say. It could be that, but it looks like this version of Aizen is at least happy to have his arms detached from his body. That seems to be part of the transformation, which would imply it's not the same deal as having them forcibly ripped from his body, and therefore where does the actual connection to the Soul King lie there? Another piece of inspiration the design seems to actually borrow from is Aizen's Muken outfit, where obviously in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, Aizen is freed from prison very briefly to help the Shinigami in their time of need, and he has a brand new prisoner's uniform essentially made up of these binds that are used to restrict the kind of range of his power. And keep it close to him at all times. And this version of Aizen kind of looks a bit like that. He's wearing a long, fairly tight-fitting but not quite black cloak that does look very reminiscent of Muken, but perhaps more on the nose. He now has this like white almost mantle-like thing going over his shoulders, which is very similar to the rag he had around his shoulders in the Muken outfit. So it does look like to me they are taking inspiration from that as well. Needless to say, I think it's pretty awesome that so many of these avenues of Aizen's character, and even like hypothetical versions of his character, have come together to make this seemingly ultimate version of him. Although I will say, where there's loads of mirror flower references, the water moon part of his Zanpakuto seems to have been left out a little bit. If you watch the actual gameplay around this character, I think it's his like third special attack, creates this massive shadowy eclipse-like motion that I think is supposed to be like his eyes closing like a blink, but it could also be an eclipse to reference the water moon, although that's a bit of a reach, I think. Another thing I found interesting as well, when I was kind of looking back at some of the Aizen stuff very briefly in time for this video, the way his wings are separated from his body, but also the way his arms are separated from his body, really kind of reminds me, more the wings than anything else, of his very unique teleportation ability that he had as Butterflies. And at this point, he was so divine that he was no longer using Shunpo, he was instead quite literally breaking his body into separate parts and then reforming them again in a totally different place. And the benefits of this were Ichigo didn't know where he was going to appear necessarily. You kind of see that when Aizen disappears for the first time, breaking away into nothing, Ichigo kind of looks around like, where's he gone? And then he reforms behind him. And just the way the wings look, particularly when he attacks and he push even further out, it really reminds me of that visual, which maybe is something they're going for, particularly on one of the concept art pages that really looks like that to me. And so we come to the point where I have to provide an answer as to what I think this form is supposed to be representing in our non-canon what if for fun world. And I think, in my opinion anyway, this is supposed to be the final step in Aizen's evolution, but not just his evolution with the Hogyoku, but also with the fusing of his Zanpakuto. So obviously throughout the battle with Ichigo and a lot of Deicide, Aizen is slowly but surely fusing with Kyoka Suigetsu. It grows attached to his arm, like he loses his hand and it quite literally becomes a blade at one point. And then finally, after Ichigo hits him with Mugetsu, Aizen stands, his Zanpakuto disappears, and he says, you know, I've become truly one with my Zanpakuto. Although later on in the Thousand Year Blood Rock, he has one again. But I'm kind of thinking, because this new form of his has such overt references to the Mirror Flower, Water Moon, if this isn't some kind of final Getsuga Tensho style transformation of Aizen's own making. Obviously, when Ichigo activated the final Getsuga Tensho, he explicitly says he becomes one with Getsuga, and we see that. His body is leaking flaming black Reiatsu, he has like these new bindings on his face, he has become Getsuga itself. So I'm wondering, maybe this form is Aizen becoming Kyoka Suigetsu itself, becoming Kanzen Saimin or complete hypnosis itself. And I think maybe you kind of see that in the special ability when he summons an actual mirror flower, crushes it, and you see his face in one of the mirror shards. I think that would honestly be really cool. And then obviously the fact that he has the Hogyoku in his chest, there are the references to Butterflies and all those kind of later forms as well. On his back, on the reverse side of his wings, he has eyes that look pretty much identical to the eyes the monster version of Aizen has. That's why I think this is a combination. This is not only Aizen's ultimate technique with his Zanpakuto upon becoming fully fused with it, he's also still in control of the Hogyoku, still its master, and still evolving ever further. Some people have said that maybe this is the form he would have taken had Ichigo not used Mugetsu on him, weakening him to the point where Kisuke could seal him, and maybe that's what's going on here, I'm not entirely sure. In my opinion, and this is quite literally just my opinion, could be completely wrong here, Aizen believed that he needed the fear of death to continue to evolve, and that does kind of make sense, but I always felt that the monster version of Aizen was like an abomination that he hadn't planned on. And this form of Aizen that we see before us looks more like a natural evolution of Butterflies than it does of that creature later on. So I think that creature that Aizen becomes is an aberration that results from him struggling more against Ichigo than he anticipated, and therefore having to perhaps accelerate his evolution to the point where it like rips his face in half and he looks like some disgusting creature. This is the one that would have come more naturally had Ichigo not been able to meet his power level. That's perhaps what I'm thinking. Could be completely wrong. I've also always thought that Gin clearly threw a wrench into Aizen's plans as well. Butterfly Aizen is already starting to look a little bit monstrous, like a sort of twisted angel, and that's because Gin wasn't supposed to kill him. He like outright kills him, blows a massive hole in his chest, and the Hogyoku is forced to sort of like rebuild Aizen into some twisted thing. Certainly I think that works better for the monster version of Aizen, but I think it could still apply to Butterfly Aizen as well. So that's kind of my final take on this. This is literally an Aizen who has transcended everything. He's transcended the Shinigami because he has become one with his Zanpakuto and has become complete hypnosis in the same way that Ichigo became Getsuga. They became one and the same in their final moments. But also he has transcended the Hollow as well, because the Hogyoku, he has become its true master and he has taken on this final form of his Hogyoku transformations. The simplest way to put it is that he is the Aizen who has kind of become the most transcended version of the two races that he was trying to transcend anyway. And so, yeah, I guess it probably would be a final version of Aizen that would kind of come about had he not found Ichigo so much trouble to deal with, to the point where he had to quickly transform again and again. But of course, like I said, it's not canon. This is all just complete speculation on my part, and I love that Bleach Brave Souls continues to do this, because no matter what you think of the game, in my opinion at least anyway, the fact that they keep creating unique and original designs like this for beloved characters is validation enough for the game's existence. You know, some of my absolute favourite designs in the game belong to the Hogyoku Ascended Espada. I think they nearly all look really cool, and certainly some of them could legitimately work as great next steps for those characters, even though they obviously never will be. So that's basically my thoughts, my very quick, probably a little bit muddled but pulled together thoughts on this new, pretty awesome looking version of Aizen that we're getting in Bleach Brave Souls. Probably dropping in the game, I think, later this week, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's it for the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Aizen's brand new godly form, and whether or not you're going to try and summon for it when it drops later this week. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your theories, because again, one of the coolest things about these original designs from Brave Souls is that we get to speculate again about these characters, and that's a lot of fun. So let me know if you think maybe I'm completely off the mark with this being half Aizen's own version of the final Getsuga Tensho, but also half his complete domination over the Hogyoku. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories too. But until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. I'll see you then.